I might be on here. Christoph, you're first. Congratulations. Thank you so much for being here. I will be answering questions of any kind throughout the entire live stream, just fine-tuning my image here because I am obsessed with that. How's that look? From Greece, Manos, thank you for joining me and us. How's this look? Not too bad. You can only see a little bit of my laundry. I'm gonna move this light as well. Okay. I'm a little dark, but I think that's as best as I can really do. No, I can do it. Yeah, okay, I think I'm gonna move this also. I think that looks pretty good. Does that sound okay for everybody? I know you can see my mic. From the Netherlands, playtesting the Percept 97, Gravity Tour, and Blade 98. If I had to choose to switch to one of those, I'd probably go for the Blade. Today we're stringing the new Ultras. Exact same paint scheme as the E-Zone, which I find hilarious. It's like they all went to the same designer. So this is the E-Zone. It's a little less saturated than the Ultras, but they have the same kind of teal side accent. So everyone went for Blurple. The Ultra Pro is a very nice gloss metallic, and the Ultra 100 is a little metallic, but you can't see the sparkling as much. They have a kind of interesting paint, like faded color for the various logos. So it's kind of like a teal fade. These came shipped to me with Alu Power, and I've hit with them a couple times already, actually. I just got back from shooting a documentary. So I haven't played for like 10 days, but let's see where so these were strung at, I don't know what tension. Hit with it for 3 times. Probably maybe max 2 hours altogether. 28 DT is actually not bad. They do feel pretty floppy, I will say. Now, thank you so much, Maritas, for the compliment. I don't know. It's pretty hard to beat the 305S. Greetings from Chicago. You've got a Clipper Mate, classic, an absolute classic stringing machine. I'm gonna increase this. So it sounds like the 98 square inch Ultras are going to be Japan exclusive, at least for now. I saw some people maybe speculating that we would see January release. But with the Kei Nishikori endorsement, I can understand why that's Japan only. He's an absolute superstar there. And I think the worry would be that the Ultra 98 sales could cannibalize the Blade sales a little bit. Here, from what I understand, that racket is a Wilson Tour 95 mold, so kind of like the rounded 95 in the throat, and then an H22 hoop 1819. Radek wants to know what documentary I was filming. So I went up to northern BC for about a week, and I'm just working on kind of a biographical piece for an Indigenous artist who lives up there. And it was, first of all, insane honor to be chosen for that job. But it's such a type of content that's so far outside what I usually do, right? Because I am a tennis racket reviewer, very different from artist bio type stuff. But I did a lot of Indigenous studies in school, so I have some parts of me that are a little bit more varied than just the crappy tennis player racket tech that I am. Christopher Mayer, for now, you play the Prestige Tour 2023, and you really like it, but you want a little more power. Would the V-Core 95 be a good choice? I would say, like, maybe if you know you want to stick with a 95 on paper, but I think, like, going to something like an EZO 98 would be an interesting choice. Although I can't even remember how those Prestige Tours swing. Because from all I remember as well is that's like a relatively powerful 95. So it might be time to go up in head size. Maybe like the RF01 Pro would be an interesting choice as well. What string should we put in this bad boy? I have a huge selection. I always kind of think Rattlesnake Tour Sniper, similar feel and playability to Alu. Raphael Carbonell, thank you so much for being a member. What is my string of choice for the Prestige Tour 95? I would probably put Tour Sniper in there again. I find that head frames, especially the Auxetic, prefer a stiffer string, so even like Lynx Tour would work as well, I think. Why Radek wants to know, why do players want to feel what happened on the string bed? Isn't the ball already gone by the time you feel anything? I think it helps you know how your spin was. So it's not a part of it is like you get the satisfaction on a good shot, which is great. Like there are some rackets that are less connected than others. And then you get that really pure cannon hitting noise when you've like really connected. And then you got some situations where you don't really get that pure feeling. And then it's also nice to go, oh, that ball missed because I didn't apply enough spin. And you can, if you're using a rack that has good feel, it'll kind of tell you how that string bed reacted to the ball. Whereas if you use something that's quite muted, I find that it's a little bit harder to know with certainty how the output of the ball differed from your intended input. Greetings from Charlotte. Charlotte, what Charlotte? I don't know where that is because there's a lot of different Charlottes, I think. Going to the Blade 98 due to some arm issues, still figuring things out. A good way to get away from arm issues might be going to something a little softer than Hyper G, not necessarily going full nylon, but Slinko Mach 10, I think, would be something that could be a solution as well. Should be relatively familiar feeling, especially if you're letting that Hyper-G sit, it locks up. If it's not fresh, like there's not a lot of snapback. And that lack of snapback can cause a more jarring feel. It can also cause you to really have to swing harder to find spin, and a lot of time it's that over-rotating that gives you the arm pain. Tamgon Bagel, one of my favorite members, hilarious name. How do you get out of the cycle of wondering if you're leaving too much power on the table? Playing a pure drive, struggling to get back to the modern, you go back to the modern player's frame, repeat. So you're in a sort of a racket crisis. I guess you're never going to know for sure. Like, the idea that you're ever going to have certainty on the tennis court is maybe unrealistic. And there's always going to be shots that you play on court where you are going to miss or maybe not hit it perfectly, where you will think a different racket would have helped. Like, if you're playing defense, you're going to feel like you should maybe be using a power racket. If you're playing offense, you might feel like you should be using a control racket. And so I try to think a lot more about, like, how am I using a certain racket? So if I'm using a power racket, I can't expect pinpoint precision out of it, so I don't. And so I can be a little bit more at peace with that. And I also think putting yourself in a position where pinpoint precision is required to win is probably not a high percentage situation. Same thing as if you have to blast a winner, right? Like, if you're on court and you have to hit the line to win, A, you're probably being a little bit delusional. B, you might be playing someone who's just too good. And generally, you shouldn't be aiming for that kind of target. So that kind of mentality, for me, aiming for big targets with a more powerful racket has been the thing that's helped me get away from being obsessed with control. When I think of what I want from control, I want it to be predictable. It's not necessarily low powered. So, like, I get quite a bit of control out of the Babolat Pure Drive, because I know no matter where I hit it on the string bed, I'm going to get a very similar response. It's not going to bend on me. It's going to be firm, stable, and consistent, despite being quite high power. And so when you're using that kind of frame, you can play big time percentage tennis, especially if you have the legs to kind of grind out longer points. So you don't have to go for a passing shot right away. You can just dip it low at the feet, and because you're using a power racket, maybe that ball comes a little bit harder, a little bit heavier, a little bit more spin, and your opponent is more likely to cough up a short ball, which you can then continue to put in a percentage position. I always underestimate how little stretch this Tour Sniper has, and I keep on cutting it a little bit too short. Peter Tran, thank you for being a member, Peter. Lynx Tour is your go-to string. How would it compare to Otoro and to Pure Rush? Okay. Oh, I don't know if this is going to work. I need to get a starting clamp. All right, we might just we're going to do some bad stringing technique, I think. Because I don't feel like restarting because I have tight time today. So everyone pretend I'm not doing what I'm doing and probably don't even look. Okay. So back to Peter's question about Link's Tour and how it compares to a couple other strings. So one tricky thing about Link's Tour that you kind of always has to remember is it does run thick. So a lot of people are finding, the 1.25 gauge runs thick and plays heavy. So it's actually like on a scale weighing like a couple grams more. So going to Otoro Tour from there, which is a 1.3 millimeter string, you're going to be going down in gauge. So in that way, like sheer durability, how much material it takes to get through the string, Otoro is going to be less than Link's Tour. But Link's Tour is also like, I would call it a low snapback string. Okay. Now what sketchy move am I going to do? Let's do this. So I'd call Link's Tour a low snapback string. So compared to Toroline, you're going to get a lot more snapback out of it, which if you're a big topspin player, you're going to probably see less notching in Otoro Tour compared to Link's Tour because of that. All right. Nobody saw that sketchy move I just did. And then Pure Rush is more similar in terms of snapback compared to Link's Tour. So it is higher powered. I would say you get similar amount of vibrations, but the control on Link's Tour is better. Maybe the spin on Link's Tour is also better. But the price, depending regionally, some people have hookups, but generally I think you'll find Pure Rush is a better price. I would say if you love Link's Tour and you want more to see what it would be like to have more spin, then I would consider trying Otoro Tour. If you like Link's Tour and you want to consider what it would be like to have a little more power, then I would try Pure Rush. If neither of those things sound interesting to you, then I would not try either of them. All right. Profit Wild, thank you for being a member. Profit wants to know about Otoro Snap, which I have not tried, again, because I went away for 10 days to film a documentary, so I haven't really played or strung. This is my first day stringing for quite some time. You're welcome, Peter. Thank you for supporting me. It's people like you who send nice messages and join the membership and all that stuff who are the reason that I can keep doing this at the volume at which I do, and having a relatively high volume helps me improve more regularly. All right. Any Toroline strings that I like in the 300S? I actually really liked Wasabi. I know Wasabi is a bit out of fashion these days, but with the 300S and the T-Fights in general, they're very raw and connected. So and they're quite stiff. So I didn't mind wasabi to kind of give it a more solid, more muted feel, especially if you have arm concerns. And the control on wasabi is actually quite good. Like I would say, I would say I probably like wasabi in the 300S more than Otoro. Ariane Veer wants to know, do I think Lynx Tour is good in the E-Zone 100 if you use Polytour Pro? Lynx Tour is going to be quite a bit stiffer than your Polytour Pro. You're going to get more bite on the ball because of that edge. Generally, it's going to feel heavier, so swinging the racket with Lynx Tour, if you're getting the same gauge, will often feel heavier than most strings, especially Polytour Pro. Well, not especially, but including Polytour Pro. The feel, especially if you go for the champagne color, which is the one I recommend, is more connected than Polytour Pro, but it might feel harsh in that frame depending on your sensitivity. I think if you're curious, I would just try it. I do generally think Yonex strings do play well in Yonex frames. That's been my experience recently. I don't know if there's any way for them to do that intentionally or not, but all right. My thoughts on O-Ports, Prince rackets, pros and cons. O-ports are kind of annoying to string, but that said, a 1618 O-port is easier for me to string than like a 1820 normal racket. I generally don't choose them. I've had a couple of bad experiences with O-ports, but like the Phantom 100X that I just hit, I actually did quite like. And so I am a little bit more interested in revisiting O-ports and being a little bit less judgmental about them, because I think my original beliefs about O-ports is that they were worse because I had one bad experience, but it could have been other things with that racket that I did not like. So I'm trying to be a little bit more open-minded about these kinds of technologies and not just wiping them off with a blank slate. Like for example, like I don't really think good things about this Ultra 100 generally, just because it doesn't seem like they've put effort into developing it over the years. And I thought the V2 was one of the worst rackets I ever hit. But then looking back at my ancient review of the Ultra V3 for Courtside Sports and how I remember that racket, I actually did quite like it, and so I'm actually quite liking it now as well. So that's maybe an example of how sometimes going off preconceived notions might hurt your experience. Okay. Simone Scopel. Can I recommend, what string would I recommend for the Pure Strike 100 16x20? You've been using RPM rough and you think it's a bit stiff and hard to control. I don't know. My time with that racket was so short, and I hated it so much when I tried it that I really haven't thought about it. If you like RPM rough and you want something soft, it's really hard to get softer and more control. One thing that might be tripping you up is RPM rough saws into itself pretty fast because it has good snapback because it's very slippery, but the texture kind of cuts at it. So it's one of the strings that I notch much faster than others. So you could maybe just try to going to something that's softer and less and more durable, not necessarily more inherently control oriented, because I actually think the control on RPM rough is very good. So maybe like a Slinko Mach 10, try that. Maybe increase the tension by 2 pounds or something as well. Tamagon Bagel might have missed. Do I have any early impressions on the Pro 99? I do. I don't really know if I'm supposed to talk about it because this racket doesn't come out till tomorrow. And I also don't even know if I should be doing this live stream about this racket, again, because it doesn't come out till tomorrow. I do think the thread is live on Tennis Warehouse, though. My initial impressions are, so far it's pretty raw, connected feeling racket. I've only tried it again with Alu Power that was air shipped, so it lost what felt to me, it was a bit bagged out feeling, and still crisp. So that's why I am restringing with Tour Sniper, because I kind of want to replicate that experience. I'm not getting a ton of spin out of it. It does feel like there's quite a bit of head weight, and it does feel like an older frame in a lot of ways. So I never hit the Steam 99. I hit the Steam 99S, and that was a very crazy racket. But that was when it came out again. So I was like 16 years old, I remember, when that came out. And I was like, I didn't demo that much then, but I did demo that. And I just remember liking the arrow more. Okay, Luca Como, I can't see that far. These are just Dunlop 300 Tours. So those are Simon's new frames in a grip size that works better for him. He only had one SX300 in a grip 3, which just wasn't quite right. So I'm trying to make that better. Yeet Tennis, using 16 gauge Razor Soft at 51 pounds in your Prestige Tour. Am I not keeping track of names, or is like half this lobby using a Prestige Tour from 2023? Anyway, you're looking to get more spin and depth on the ball. You know the Prestige lacks power. Okay, so you're using Razor Soft. Yeah, there's definitely a wide amount of strings that would give you more spin and power than Razor Soft. I don't think Razor Soft is very powerful at all. So like Toro line, obviously, like Otoro Tour is going to be the closest in hitting feel. And it's going to certainly, normal Otoro would probably be a more noticeable increase in power. I would probably go for the white one, get a more connected feel. That's one option. If you want to maybe go to like drop tension by 3 pounds and go for this Tour, that could work as well. Slinko Mach 10 would work. I think feel like a noticeable increase in spin and power as well. Cons of the Prince Ripcord. John Lynn Smith wants to know. Comfort is very bad. A lot of people, I would guess, especially if you like Yonex rackets, I don't think you're going to like the feel at all, because it's very extremely raw. You might find it tinny. It's very string sensitive too, so the wrong string could definitely ruin your experience. Lots of cons, but a very fun racket in my opinion. Gabriel Salas, not really sure, but he's a member, so we got to thank him very much for being a member. Thank you, Gabriel. Have I tried the VCore SV98? No, I haven't. That is one I really do want to try. I'm such a cheap bastard that when they do come up on Marketplace, I generally don't buy them. I'm kind of just holding out for one day I meet my friend Caleb Ace Honore, because he's got one of those in person. He's down in Florida or Arkansas or some southern state. We just didn't carry them at the store. When I worked at Courtside Sports, we only carried the 95 because of Chapo and us being a Canadian store. So I never tried the 98. One that's eluded me, one that I'd really like to try, one that I worry also that I will like it so much that I'll want to switch and then have to like hunt them down. So that's another reason I kind of not actively gone for it. All right, Brandon Long. What are my thoughts of Tour Sniper in the Gravity Tour 98? If I were stringing in the Gravity Tour 98, I'd definitely be going for the 130 gauge compared to the 125 gauge because I've had durability issues. I imagine it would be good. I haven't personally tried it, but for me, like the Gravity Tour plays great with Lynx Tour. and any racket that plays great with Lynx Tour generally plays great with Tour Sniper. So I would say good, and the tension I would choose if I was going for thicker, me personally, so this is because I don't know anything about you, I would probably strain like 54. I like that racket tighter, strung tighter than usual because the pattern is so open. Ooh. Oh, right, that's why that is. Because I did a sketchy move. All right, what else we got? Okay, big in smash. This is an interesting question in my opinion because there's no answer. But Big in Smash says, hello, I'm using the 2020 Pure Aero VS, so the Alcaraz original, and you want to add 5 grams to have more spin and stability. Where do you put it? So what I want to talk about to answer this question is how weight and spin are correlated. Weight and there's not necessarily a weight correlation with weight and spin. Spin and power are often connected. So usually anytime you have more power, you'll also have more spin. But with spin specifically, racket head speed is very important. So if you add 5 grams at 12, it's probably going to slow down the racket so much that you'll be losing swing speed and hitting less spin, especially towards the end of your match. Anytime you add weight, you will be increasing the stability, of course, we know this. But the key is to add weight as close as possible to where you're going to be making contact with the ball. That's how you increase stability and power and spin and all that most effectively. So, so it kind of depends on your hitting location as well. If you hit towards the tip, you'll notice the benefits of adding weight at 12 more. If you hit off center a lot, then you'll notice the benefits of adding weight at 3 and 9 a lot more. In the research done on Tennis Warehouse University by Crawford Lindsay, that is referred to as hitting weight. So hitting weight is the amount of weight next to where the ball is struck. So there's no right answer, and that's because everyone's technique is so different. So your technique is going to respond to weight changes differently. For me personally, adding 5 grams of weight all to 12 would probably be a lot, depending on your spec. I would start with just 2 grams. At 12, see if you get better spin and stability, because sometimes 2 grams is just enough. And then I put weight in the handle to kind of like tune the timing. So if I want to get the racket a little bit more in front, I'll put it at the top of the handle or in the throat. If I want to get more leg, like more of the kind of Nadal leg, then you might put it towards the butt. All right. David Shelton wants to know the best spin rackets that have good stability. Pure Aero Rafa, if you can still find them. That's definitely one. These are all going to be 100 square-inch rackets because I think 100s are just better for spin and stability. What else do I hit a lot of spin with? E-Zone 100 I hit quite a bit of spin with, and it's very stable. I haven't hit it, but I assume the Extreme MP's got to be on the list as well. And then I guess if I had to put a 98 on there, Pure Aero 98. I got a lot of spin out of the Strike 98 too, which was probably more stable than the Aero. The Aero, I don't just get sheer, like I have a hard time modulating the spin. And like I talked to my other friends like Luca and AC Tennis, and it's hard to get the racket flip with the Aero 98, and that is one of the best ways to get spin. What time is it? It's 3. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me on this relatively short live stream. I kind of have to go. I'll cut some strings because I gotta prep some stuff, but I gotta go pretty soon. All right, Buddha Bob, thank you so much for being a member, Buddha. You love the channel and you want my thoughts on other brands like Diadem rackets, particularly the Axis 98. I do have a review on the Axis 98. I do think the Axis 98 is the best attempt at replicating the Pure Aero 98, which I think the Pure Aero 98 is kind of the gold standard. It's the racket that everyone is trying to beat. It's the racket that pros are switching to, la 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 la. And I think Diadem has done the best job at copying it while adding kind of their own spin on it, being a more comfortable option. I think the feel could be improved a lot. I think the stability is not quite there compared to the Pure Aero 98, the stability and power. I think the Pure Control might be a little bit better. But I think the thing they really need to do to fix that frame is stability. And then when it comes to smaller niche brands, a lot of them exist purely on the notion that they're the comfortable option, which I find frustrating. So Diadem is one of them. You know, Diadem, they say comfort is a pillar of what they offer, but I don't think that their rackets offer that much comfort. I would like to try a Pro Connects at some point, but I also don't because the beams are so thin on the Black Ace line that was recently updated. And I think thin beams are just kind of inferior from a performance standpoint. You're just never going to be getting the same power, spin, and stability with the thin beam. Maybe you can access a little bit higher racket head speed, but I don't think that really makes up for it. And then what are some other small brands? Like Vocal relies heavily on comfort, and they've completely fallen off. Anybody else rely? And then you have like micro brands like Hazel or Carve, and you know they're just going to be extremely limited by research budget. So, okay. Jason, yes, I did see the Ultra Tour 98, and I'm sad that they're not coming here. I do want to see that. Do I know any better tension holding versions than Hawk Touch? Because you really like Hawk Touch. I would try Restring Sync, I guess. I don't know that the pure tension holding is going to be better, but it's going to resist notching a lot better. And I think a lot of people often confuse tension maintenance for reduction for the losses in playability you get for notching. So you lose tension, you hit the ball out, right? But what happens when it notches is you get less spin, so then you hit the ball out. And I think when you lose tension, you can really adjust actually where you're aiming. You lose tension, the ball goes deeper, so you just aim a little bit shorter, not a big deal. The ball, if you get notched strings, you get less spin, then all of a sudden you have to go, okay, actually, I don't know how much spin I have to produce on each shot because you're not going to know exactly where the strings have notched, and that's a lot harder to control for. So that's why a lot of reviewers are a little bit obsessed with reducing notching. What else needs to be cut? This one. Yeah. That one's fine. This needs to be cut for sure. Okay. Simon, show yourself. I did actually want to do a live stream with Simon yesterday, but we just didn't get to it because we had other stuff to do, and he's working his actual job right now. Because not everyone is as lucky as I am. Have I revisited any frames or strings recently that made me change my opinion on them? Gabos, thank you for being a member. That is a good question. Okay, yeah, Restring Zero. So Restring Zero, I have all these memories of like going into tournaments with it, missing long, feeling like Restring Zero was launchy. I have a couple of prototypes for Restring Zero variants that I was going through, so I put Restring Zero in my Rafa. And I'm like, this string is a lot more connected than I remember it being. Like I actually was feeling like I knew what was going on with the string bed. Maybe that's because I'm using the undampened Rafa now. And I didn't really have launchiness. Like, I think now my swing speeds are a little bit more constantly high. And in the past, I had more variance in my swing speed. I still have more variance in my swing speed than someone like AC Tennis, I think. I hit more variety of shots, maybe. But I don't know. Restring Zero, I think actually, I previously thought that it would not perform well at a high level, but I think that's not really true. And I think a good example of that is Juan, who runs the company. He's a way better player than me. Rips forehands, and he doesn't seem to be having control issues with that string. But then the people who have control issues often have slightly like lower swing speed. So that's one. And I actually really liked one of the prototypes I had for New Zero. So I hope that comes to market because that's like tournament ready for me. Do I want to play this? Yeah, I'll just play. Okay. I gotta go now. Thank you so much for joining this live stream. Really appreciate everyone for being here. I wish I could be on here a little bit longer, but I have to go, and this is like one of my first days back, so my office was a mess. I mostly had to like clean up and prepare for this. I was hoping to start way before this, but I'll try to do another one sooner because I like talking to you guys, and it's a little bit more fun for me to do this than like go reply to comments. Have a good one. Happy hitting, as they say on some other YouTube channels. And don't forget to play some tennis.